By the end of this video, you'll understand what's actually keeping conflict alive in your mind as a highly sensitive person, and how that can begin to release. In this video, you'll discover what keeps conflict alive in your mind after the event is over, why trying to think it through doesn't bring the relief you expect, and how the experience begins to release when you see it more clearly. Let's say you have a difficult interaction with someone. Maybe it's a disagreement, maybe it's a tense conversation, maybe something small, but it doesn't sit right. And then it ends. The conversation stops and you go your separate ways, and on the surface, everything is done. But inside, it's not. You replay what was said. You go over what happened, their tone, what you said, that one sentence that felt off, and you think, should I have said something different? Did I come across the wrong way? Are they upset with me? Even if they said it's fine, your system doesn't quite believe it. So you keep going over it, not because you want to, but because something in you feels unresolved, and you try to settle it. You think it through, you try to find the right interpretation, you try to reassure yourself. But in all these cases, it somehow still doesn't fully land. And hours later, or the next day, or even 2 or 3 days later, it's still there. It can even happen where it goes on for months or years, or decades. A kind of emotional residue, a kind of tension that hasn't been released. And eventually, a kind of quiet frustration that can also come up. Something like, why am I still thinking about this? Highly sensitive people process experiences more deeply. This just comes with the territory. It's part of having this trait of being a highly sensitive person. It's defined by your ability to process things very deeply. And this includes emotional interactions. Your system doesn't just register what was said, it is built to track tone and subtext and facial expressions and what was implied and what was left unsaid and what the implications are for the whole relationship and on and on. So when something feels slightly off, your system as an HSP keeps working on it, trying to understand it, trying to resolve it. And this is not a conscious strategy. It's just a natural extension of the depth of processing that we were born with. And this is really our forte as highly sensitive people. But it can spiral in a negative direction. It's not just the event, it's the meaning attached to that event. The mind starts adding interpretations, and that's what starts making it stressful and starts making it loop and makes it hard to actually resolve. The mind starts thinking, oh, maybe this damaged the relationship. They might see me differently now. I shouldn't have said that. Or I should have handled it better. Now the situation is no longer just a moment. It has become a kind of problem to solve. And as long as it feels unresolved, your system keeps returning to it. Because as highly sensitive people, we like to solve problems. We like to find resolution. That's our nature. So we've been given a little puzzle and we try to solve it. Little do we know that it's a puzzle that is actually often impossible to solve on the level of problem solving. Over time, this pattern can be exhausting. A single interaction can take up hours of mental space. And you might notice the effects of this. For example, difficulty focusing afterwards, because your mind has been so focused on this and trying to find that solution that it's used up all its bandwidth and there's nothing left for anything else. You may notice a drop in energy or a lingering sense of unease, something unresolved on the emotional level. And naturally, you'll start to notice this replaying of conversations when you're actually trying to rest. And sometimes there'll also be a subtle self-judgment, like, why can't I just let this go? Which only adds another layer to the stressful thinking and the looping and the constant chewing on this problem that doesn't seem to have a resolution. Underneath this pattern is often a quiet belief, and that belief is, if I fully understand this, then I'll feel better. Sounds like a reasonable belief, and in many situations, it's actually true. But this belief is what keeps the mind chewing and working on it, and revisiting the situation and reanalyzing it and trying to close the loop. But the kind of resolution that the mind is looking for doesn't come from more thinking. This is the strange part. A lot of problems in our life can be solved by thinking more about it. Think through, and then you find solutions, and that's what works in many, many applications. But in this case, the lack of resolution is not cognitive, it's emotional. And that makes a huge difference, because emotional issues aren't necessarily resolved by coming through trying to find a solution. There may not be a solution. And so when you begin to see things in this way, and if you're trying to resolve it intellectually or through thinking or problem solving, then you can stay stuck going around and around and around. But not everything needs to be fully understood to settle. That's your way out. That's the back door that we often miss, is that you don't have to understand to allow something to settle. Sometimes what is needed is not more analysis, but less attachment to the interpretations being added. When the mind begins to question the meaning that it's assigning to this situation, then the emotional charge starts to loosen. And the experience can finally move through, and you can find that settled experience again. The difficulty letting go is common to all of us. It's not a flaw. And it comes because of a combination of our depth of processing, which is a natural part of being an HSP, and our emotional attunement, which is also a natural part of being an HSP, and that combined with unexamined interpretations. When you begin to examine those interpretations, question those interpretations that the mind has added to the actual event in your mind, then those interpretations often begin to soften. And then the system no longer needs to keep returning to the moment to try to find resolution. And then letting go naturally happens. Not by forcing it, but because there's nothing left to hold on to. So if you're tired of replaying conversations long after they're over, and you don't want to keep carrying emotional tension from one interaction into the rest of your day, but what you really want is to feel settled again, even if the situation wasn't perfect, then this is exactly the kind of inner work you can explore with me in one-on-one sessions. Because this pattern doesn't have to change, and it doesn't actually change by trying to think your way out of it. It shifts when you begin to see the beliefs that keep the experience alive, and you learn how to let them loosen. In our work together, we slow these moments down. We look at the interpretations that get layered onto the interaction. And we begin separating what actually happened from what the mind is adding to it. If you're ready to shift this pattern, go to the video description and click on the first link you find, or go to trueinnerfreedom.com/working-together. You don't have to force yourself to let go. You just have to stop holding on to what's keeping it in place.